Joining me now here in the Knicks Film School pregame show with the Knicks wrapping up their 4-game West Coast trip, most likely without Jalen Brunson. We'll see who else might not be playing in this game. He is a friend of the pod. You remember him from his outstanding appearance over the summer, where he confirmed that he also didn't want Julius Randle. And in hindsight, thank you for talking us out of that.
It's every other year. That's what it is.
We've been making the case that he might actually be the most improved player this year, especially after last season. But even though those of you in New York watching and listening are here, if you have the Odyssey app, check him out on 1080 The Fan on the Odyssey app in Portland. And of course, here on the Blue Wire Podcast Network, he is the host of the Jacked Ramseys Podcast. Mr. Danny Marang, welcome back to the Knicks Film School Podcast.
It's good to be back. It's a weird little relationship. We got a nice little Portland, New York, trade. What do you call it? The exchange program going. We're building bridges. We're both big bridge cities, Portland and New York. We really like our bridges. And so I feel like that's what's happening here.
Speaking of bridges, there was a bridge into our seasons this year in the fact that the trade that might have elevated the Knicks to a level that nobody expected happened through Portland, and it took a hive away from us that just won't go away. So we'll talk about all of it. I promise, Knicks fans, we will talk about Cam Reddish on the pod, and we'll find out how things are going in Portland. But I did a little research, and more specifically, I just looked at your tweets over the past couple days, and I've wanted to get
the painkiller induced tweets.
Yes. I don't know how much you want to get into it, but you're also kind of on the mend at the moment. And God bless you for doing a podcast with me.
I literally have nothing else to do. So look, you've literally got me out of bed for like the first time in 2 weeks. So.
Well, then you're welcome for getting you out of bed for the first time in 2 weeks.
There you go. We'll give a little peek behind the curtain. I literally popped a Percocet before we started the show.
Yes. So this may go places that I am not prepared for, but we'll navigate through. I did see you talking about Chauncey and talking about the coach and more discussing how this season has gone with some Portland Trailblazers fans. And I like to get a vibe check when people show up to this show, especially for a team that has a Hall of Famer having, just by the impact
his best season. Yeah,
it's one of his best seasons.
No, it's his best.
So Dame is having one of his best seasons.
It might be the singular best offensive season in Trailblazers history.
And they're having not the best season as a team, and the 31-37, they've lost 5 of their last 16 since the Josh Hart trade. I'm not saying it's because of the Josh Hart trade, but they're 4-9 since that stretch. How are the vibes right now in Portland?
Awful. But I shouldn't say awful. They're really bad following an embarrassing loss to the Pelicans where they got down 39 in the game. What really crippled them is they just finished with a 6-game road trip where they lose on a last-second shot to Joel Embiid in a game that they were up 21 against the 76ers.
Watch the entire second half. Thank you, live Philly money line, by the way.
I don't think Portland really fell apart as much as Embiid took over. It was Nurkic, I thought played him really well in the first half. I thought he got absolutely torched in the second half. And that's Embiid does that. I mean, Knicks fan, you're right there. You see him do it regularly. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. But losing in the way that they did, Nurk missed 4 free throws in the final 2 minutes. Blazers lose by 1. I mean, you get one of those free throws, you likely change the outcome of the game. And then you fly to New Orleans and had the Blazers beaten the 76ers. I have a reeling suspicion Damian Lillard probably would have played against the Pelicans. Because there's an opportunity there to go 4-2 on the road trip. They would have been 3-2 going into that game. And if they go 4-2 in that road trip, you can really talk yourself into play it. Like, okay, we've got something here. Anthony Simons is back. Yusuf Nurkic is back. Jeremy Grant is avoided some injuries. Okay, let's ride this thing. They get the ever-living crap kicked out of them in New Orleans in easily the most embarrassing loss of the season. Trey Murphy III goes for 41. 41 to Trey Murphy. You're watching like Shaedon Sharpe go under screens on Trey Murphy after he just hit like 6 threes, and you're just sitting there going, what the hell is happening? And if you contrast with the vibes at the start of the season when they started 10-4, it's the complete opposite. But the flip side is like there's always that population group that's like, good, it's tank time. And like even I put up the tank gif. Like it's done. The play-in stuff's done. Now it's about pivoting and getting the most out of what they can from their assets. But the fan base in general, I think, is pretty sour right now.
Before I get back to the fan base, I should mention to those listening, like you have access, like you're in the locker room.
Yeah, I'm at literally every game.
So you will know this better than anybody. Yeah. Is the organization also at tank time?
I think that Joe Cronin and the Trailblazers organization, obviously they flipped the switch last year. Mm-hmm. They lost 22 of 25.
It was impressive.
Down the stretch.
Yes.
It made the process 76ers look like chumps. Like,
yes.
Oh, let me show you how to lose. They lost 15 games by 30 or more. Mm-hmm. They're not going to go to that level. Like, because you can't shut Damian Lillard down for what, 12 games remaining?
Just about, yeah.
12, 13 games, whatever the math is.
14 to be exact for you. Yeah.
You can't shut Damian Lillard down for 14 games in the season when he's likely going to be in first team All NBA. I mean, he's been the best point guard in the NBA this year. Just the accolades, the historical stuff like that, it matters. Say what you want, like that stuff matters. And he's not a guy that abides rest, particularly after missing basically all of last year. You weren't going to get him shut down for another 14 games. Now, final week of the season, the final 3 games, you might get him shut down, but he's going to play those next 10 or so games if he clears healthy. But I think what you're seeing with the likes of Damian Lillard and Jeremy Grant being listed as questionable, which in Blazers parlance means will be decided at tip-off. I think you're seeing the soft launch of the tank, as it were. Interesting.
Let's just get your temperature on tomorrow's game in particular. Mm-hmm. Scale. I don't know if it's a scale of 1 to 10. Is Dame going to play? But just yes or no. Do you think Dame is going to play in this game against the Knicks?
If it's up to Damian Lillard, he will play.
Okay,
that's what I'll put it at. It won't be Dame that is opting to sit down.
So then the follow up is it up to Damian? Is it up to Damian Lillard to play?
That's a coin toss because like he's in the past when he first aggravated his right calf, which is what he's dealing with right now. He came back from it probably just a little bit too early and mildly aggravated it on a trip, coincidentally enough, in New Orleans. And they took his jersey out of the locker.
Ooh.
Like they wouldn't, just to keep him off the floor. It was like, Dame, you're not playing. And that's the organization protecting Dame from himself. Like calf strains, hamstrings. Like I kind of get that. Like when you're talking about those muscle groups, like those ones, like when they go, they're wildly problematic. I mean, James Harden dealt with one for basically 2 years. Chris Paul was like a year and a half. Like when you start dealing with calves and hamstrings, you just, if it goes anywhere past grade 1, you're like, cut it out. So if I had to say if Dame is going to go tomorrow, this is what I would say. If he goes, he's going to play like the next handful of games. If he doesn't go, then the soft launch of the tank becomes, is he out for the next 5-6 games? Is he out for the season? Like that's a much bigger conversation. And with them just getting back home from a road trip in which they ended the road trip getting the crap kicked out of them without Damian Lillard on the floor, I don't think you come home and have that discussion right away.
Yeah.
Like, you probably let that one marinate for 24 hours. So we'll see where it goes.
And in New York, Jalen Brunson's not playing, as I mentioned at the top, and there's speculation on whether or not this is a soft, like you've been playing more minutes than you have in your whole career for Thibodeau, and you've been our most important player this season, and this is a sneaky way of getting you some rest.
Like it's a very mid Portland team.
Right, but like it's been this whole road trip. He came back for one half against Sacramento, probably rushed back too soon from an injury, and I kind of predicted that this would be the outcome in that, like, once he went out at Sacramento, it's like, we're probably not going to see him the rest of this road trip. And then they have 3 days off from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday,
which is great
until a matinee against Jokic. I think he sits that too. And then they play again on Monday. And it's why, low-key, this is a very important game. But
if they can steal one, it keeps them right there, and while also resting Brunson. Yeah,
exactly. And so 100%. The Randall of it all, though, Randall hasn't missed a game this year. He's played all 70 games. It's
crazy what durability looks like.
Well, so like the case for his All NBA standing is that he's played every game at this level, and
which so many guys in the front court haven't.
So as a result, you understand why they're not giving him a much needed rest day. However, I don't know if you watched the national game last Sunday against the Celtics, in which they played double overtime, and he and Emmanuel Quickly played.
Yeah, what did Quick finish with? 55?
Quick finished with 55 minutes and 37 points. Yeah. So, like, after that, this team has looked gassed, and they kind of like gutted one out against the Lakers yesterday. But there's been a lot of people in the fan base with like these guys need a blow, and I knew they weren't going to. But I guess where I go to my next question is like, if Dame were in that situation, but with this kind of injury, do you think he's playing tomorrow? Like if the season wasn't, like you said, kind of on the brink of getting away from them, like say they're 37-31.
Dame would 100% force it.
Okay.
He would force it. Like the organization would have to step in and like have a very serious conversation about with the health and fitness people. And like, this is where that whole Gary Payton thing and all the crap that was peddled by that absolute, like just pile of crap article from Slater and the Athletic. I'll gladly name check him when it was that stupid that the Blazers would ever treat their players like that. They wouldn't allow somebody to put themselves in a position to hurt themselves. So if it was something where the health and fitness group and the front office were on the same page with, hey, it's okay. Like we're like monitoring thresholds and he hasn't redlined anything, then I think they'd let him play. But if he's nearing that stuff, like all these guys, they all wear trackers in their jerseys now, like to see how much mileage they're getting, how much sleep they're getting. Like all that stuff is all monitored. Yeah. The next CBA, like when it comes out with the player tracking stuff, it's going to be really interesting to see what's in there on that stuff, because you're disclosing a lot of personal information. I'm sure teams are going to start wanting, that information in off seasons and at home and away. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there.
And then Jeremy Grant, is he playing in this game?
Jeremy, we'll see, because he left the game against the Pelicans with a lacerated eye, came back after that, and this is following a concussion that he had cleared 2 weeks ago. And he's been dealing with banged up hand, banged up leg, banged up knee. I think they have him listed as a thigh contusion. I can't remember because there's so many people that have been in and out on the injury report. But if I was a betting man, I'd probably say Jeremy gives it a go. I don't think there isn't anything, unless it popped up on the flight home or with a checkup and practice today, that when he was getting treatment, it looked worse. But like I said, questionable in Blazers parlance under this administration has been, let's see what it looks like at tip off.
That's not something Knicks fans necessarily want to hear. I know like Dame playing does take a little bit of the fear of God out of you, but the last time the Knicks played the Blazers,
that's right. Jeremy went nuts in that game,
and Simons went off. So that's all it has to take. And we don't have Jalen Brunson this time. So it's a very important game for the Knicks to get before, to at least make this a 2-2 road trip without Brunson. So that way you get to the last.
Listen, you can go 5 on a road trip without your best player. That's a hell of a road trip.
And as a result, you have 11 games over 27 days that you can kind of get your much needed rest. Exactly. So that'll be that. I guess we'll wait and see by the time people listen to this. Later today, you'll find out who's going to suit up for the Blazers. Let's get the Dame question out of the way now, because I'm with your access. I'm assuming that you've talked to Dame and may know a little better than others that speculate whether or not he may want to go to a different place and play for a different team. I'm going off of your word on this because you've been adamant that he's not going anywhere. And yet I've had some pregame pods where I've talked to people, potentially a Clippers fan or a Clippers insider, that is like, if this doesn't work out, Paul George for Dame is in play. And if this doesn't work out, James Harden for Dame is in play. Put it to bed. Is Dame's not going anywhere? And is that okay? Dame's not going anywhere.
Yeah, Dame's not going anywhere. The only thing that would happen that could potentially shake that up is if Portland sat on their hands this summer. And if I was a betting man, I would bet strongly against Portland sitting on their hands this summer.
What does that look like, sitting on their hands?
I mean, kind of doing what the Neil O'Shea teams did, which is little tinker here, little tinker there. Like, I expect Portland to be a big time player for, one of the top 10, 12 players in the league.
Really?
Like, they've got all of their draft picks. Let me rephrase this. They have a pick currently owed to the Chicago Bulls that is lottery protected into perpetuity or until 2028. They have the 5 second-round picks that they got in the Gary Payton deal. They got the Knicks pick in the Hart Reddish deal.
Yes, I do.
They could give those 5 second-round picks to the Bulls and say, hey, would you like draft capital now, or would you like to continue kicking this can? Because this is year 3. Like, one in the hand better, or 5 in the hand is better than 1 in the bush kind of a deal. That would then free up all of their picks. They don't have any other picks out. And so that would mean they would have 4 first-round picks, 3 swaps, plus Shaedon Sharpe, plus Anthony Simons, basically everything not named Damian Lillard. And if they are a tanking team and they end up in the lottery, let's say they end up in the top 6 pick in this draft, where you're likely going to get one of the Thompson twins. Like if you're top 6, like that's like as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
You're getting one of the Thompson twins who like a lot of draft experts really like. So now you've got one of the Thompsons, you've got Shaden Sharp, you've got Anthony Simons, you've got $17 million in salary cap ballast and Yusuf Nurkic, and you've got 4 first-round picks and 3 swaps. What team out there is beating that?
I hope so. I like watching Dame.
But that's kind of like my point. Like, as Portland's going to go make an offer on somebody, the only teams that have draft capital that can compete with that are OKC and Utah, and they're not in a position to make those moves right now. And even then, you're just looking at picks with those teams. Like, I think there's a lot of people in the league that look at Shaden Sharp as a blue chip prospect.
So then I have to ask about market though. Is how much does the fact that, because like the Knicks are kind of in pole position for a guy, almost got a guy last summer, and they decided it wasn't the time. Now that they're coming off a season where they could finish as high as the 5 seed, and you have all your picks, and you have controllable contracts, and you have matching salary, and you have all these OKC picks that they traded in the draft last year. You know, the market of New York, wouldn't that put them in a better position? Or do you still think because the attraction of playing with Dame?
That's the kicker. Is like, okay, because one of the things Dame was, I don't want to say reluctant to do, but he didn't do a ton of earlier in his career, which was really, really recruit guys. And then he did, and he went and got Jeremy Grant. You know, it was like, oh, is that how this works? You know, part of it was because he was an Adidas guy, and he didn't get invites to NBA basketball or the Team USA basketball because he was with the wrong shoe company. And for those that don't understand those politics, those were real. Those were very real for about 8 years. So there were guys that made those Olympic rosters over Damian Lillard that definitely should not have made that roster over Damian Lillard. But it's kind of funny because if you look at the biggest trades in the NBA, like the earth-shattering trades, not Rudy Gobert to Minnesota, that's not earth-shattering, but like the superstar trades around the league, every single one of them has been forged at Team USA.
Yeah.
You go back over the last 15 years, and it's every single one of them has been forged there. And I'm not saying Jeremy Grant is, but like I would imagine that over that time, Damian Lillard built some relationships with guys that would pay dividends come this time of year. And that's the thing is, I think when you look at things, and not that people don't want to play with Jalen or Josh or Julius or whoever ends up being their long term, just that I get New York market. I mean, a guy like Donovan wants to go there because he's from there, like, and he's a star. But Dame's a top 75 guy. There's a clear delineation between those guys. So I think that's what Portland is really hoping and praying for, is that those relationships. This is where they cash in all those chips. Now, if they get nothing out of this summer and they fall on their face, then I could see the discussions about Dame. And I don't think it would happen immediately, but I could imagine discussions would start happening about, hey, listen, you know, we got to change some paths here because things aren't working. Because honestly, the last iteration of the Blazers with Neil Olshey, they wasted probably 5-6 years of Damian Lillard.
So I'm trying to think who's on Team USA that could be in play, because what certain Knicks fans out there are thinking is that they're
Embiid
and the Embiid sweepstakes,
the CAA,
CAA connection. Exactly. Yeah. Leon Rose was his former agent. Yeah. And look, there's this fantasy scenario where, and look, I have no idea of how realistic this is or if this is a pipe dream, but you're the 3-6, you eliminate the Sixers, Harden goes to Houston, Embiid asks out, the Knicks have this treasure trove of assets to throw at Daryl Morey. I don't know if Morey would want to do that type of deal, because he's always wanted like a guy back. Like you might like actually have to trade Julius Randle in that type of trade. But
in that trade you do, because
but like the point being is that's not a Team USA. Like that's the next guy.
I think I'm just putting, like, when I say Team USA, I'm talking about like guys.
Yeah, no, Booker and Durant made the connection there. I get that. Even like, Durant and Kyrie and DeAndre Jordan was a thing, you know.
Braun, Bosch, and D-Wade.
Yeah, like, Braun, Bosch, and D-Wade. You're right. I get it.
KD Iguodala and with the Warriors, like all of those deals like have come together there.
And Draymond. Wow. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's disgusting. Like, you go back and look at the history. It's like, God, these guys really just party together and like plan this out years in advance, which they do. Like, it's not some third eye Kyrie stuff. It's like, that's what they do. But yeah, no, like, and here's the thing. When you're looking at this summer, my hot take this summer is this: Harden does go back to Houston AD does get traded out of LA. Trae Young is explored out of Atlanta. Like, I think there's probably going to be 5 or 6 like first team, second team, all NBA guys that are discussed changing hands. And when that happens, how many teams, Portland and New York being 2 of those teams, have the assets and like the willingness to make those kind of moves this summer?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you mentioned Philadelphia falling short, what happens if Miami just falls on their face with Butler and Bam? Oh, where was Bam a Team USA guy?
So that's their path out, is Butler and Bam get. See, the problem I have with the Miami thought of them blowing it up is Riley. He's like 100 years old. I don't know how much of a rebuild he's going to want to go through, but I understand the sentiment that, first of all, that there's just like free agency is not a thing. There's no real guys to look at and be like, we're going to sign him. So as a result, the trade market's going to be active, which is why I commend the Knicks for how they've structured all of their contracts really descending. It's the ones that are ascending that you could imagine are going to be on their way out in a deal soon. Hello, RJ Barrett. But as a result, the fact that you're going to have to improve your team via the trade market is something.
But exactly. And you have to thread the needle. And that's not an easy thing to do because you do need 2 teams to participate and everything else. But I think this summer, it's not being talked about enough as far as like how busy things are going to be on draft night. And heaven forbid the Blazers, let's say they tank and they end up like the 6th or 7th worst odds or best odds. What if they win the lottery or they move up to 2, 3, or 4? Like, if all of a sudden, then what the hell happens? And like, and again, I don't want to like operate in the exceptions are the rule kind of a situation, but like, that's the kind of position that they could find themselves in. Like, if all of a sudden they're number 2 and you've got Damian Lillard and Scoot Henderson's there, like, you start angling that pick on draft night, then the rebuild, if you're Pat Riley, if you're offering up, Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson, that looks a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, that's a hell of a reboot. Like, our books get cleared immediately and we can do this. Like that's the kind of situation I think that the Blazers are, again, you can't play on those like as the exceptions, like that's how you need to operate, but those are the opportunities that are there.
Yeah. That's the move.
So again, I have a very strong suspicion that they're going to take a monster swing, and that's really the difference between this front office that they have now, Joe Cronin and his assistant GMs, and the previous front office in Neil Olshey.
Before we move on to the topic everyone's waiting for, Josh Hart and Cam Reddish, I want to stick with the front office, and more specifically the entire management structure with Billups, because you arguing on the other night with people talking about coaching. And this has become like a mandatory question that I have with everybody that I talk to on these shows. And it's that, like, everybody hates their coach. Like, we've had people like, I'm talking to a Kings fan last week, and he's the only person I've talked to. It's like, oh, we love our coach.
Mike Brown's the only guy right. They haven't had a coach in 20 years. Like, Rick Adelman was 2003.
Yeah.
They literally have not had a coach in 20 years.
Literally.
That they're happy about.
Yes. So as a result, I saw you not necessarily defending Chauncey Billups, but more being like, it's just he's not the reason that this thing has completely gone off the rails. And if you had to pinpoint like the job grade the job that he's done this season, if you feel comfortable. Yeah,
it's totally fine. Like,
just like how much does he have responsible for the fact that they're 31 and 37?
I would grade it like a C+.
Okay.
So here, let me kind of frame this up. The Blazers came into the season with Joe Cronin, like I don't want to say the season was lost to start or at any point lost, because part of the goal this season was not necessarily, it's not to not compete, because all these guys compete, but it was after the last year tanking, it was because none of these guys had played with Damian Lillard. Yusuf Nurkic was the only guy who had played with Damian Lillard. Anthony Simons was a bench guard who worked with the second unit, and Dame did not play with the second unit. That was CJ McCollum. That was who ran that. They brought in 2 new starters. Like, Nasir Little was a young guy, and he was supposed to start, but he was recovering from the same abdominal groin surgery as Damian Lillard and Gary Payton. So he wasn't ready to go at camp. So Josh Hart becomes the de facto small forward starter. And so you're already like, you're coming out of the gate. And here's a little fact. The Portland Trailblazers have not and will not have their 8-man rotation that they wanted on opening night all season. Not once. Like, that's such an insane stat. Like, and so you look at it, and Joe Cronin said, look, we know we're undersized. Like, we know that after Yusuf Nurkic, we have no real size. Like Jeremy Grant is 6'9", Drew Eubanks is 6'9", like Trendon Watford is 6'8", Jabari Walker is 6'8". Like they've got a bunch of 6'8" and 6'9" guys, but they don't have like impactful size. And they're starting Josh Hart 3 because Nasir Little is neither healthy nor ready enough, who is 6'6" and about 230, which makes you bigger at the small forward. So instead you're starting 6'4" and a half, 6'5", albeit the best rebounding guard in the NBA in Josh Hart, but you're already giving up size because Dame's 6'1". Anthony Simons is 6'4", but he's 200 pounds. So they came into the season knowing, number one, they're small. Number two, that like they don't make perfect sense. Like they don't necessarily have the additional playmaking. They don't have like the wing that they want. Remember at the draft, they tried to go get OG Anunoby, which you go get 6'7", 240-pound OG Anunoby, Dame, Ant, OG, Grant, Jeremy. That looks a lot, or Nurk. That looks a lot better and a lot bigger on paper. Now your bench is Nasir Little, Josh Hart. Like you're just a lot bigger and you're a lot more functional. And so I don't think Chauncey really ever had like the full deck to work with. Now, have they pissed away more leads than anybody in the NBA? Yes. 16 double-digit blown leads. Give them half of those. They're 38 and 29 or 39 and 29.
Yeah.
They're right there with where the Knicks are. Like,
believe me, I get it. Yeah. The Knicks have a ton of blown leads like that too. So I think that's just not to discount what the Blazers have done this year. That is just like a thing happening in the league this year with double digit leads.
Yeah, there's no lead is safe, but like 16, it sounds like a lot. But at the same time, like I said, with not having their top 8, and the problem hasn't been like the length of injuries that they've had. It's been when. Like they just haven't had Dame and Ant at the same time. Justice Winslow has been out and he's likely done for the season. Like he had a high ankle sprain that is bad, just bad. And as much as like, well, what does Winslow matter? Winslow is the connective tissue for like the staggered groups. He's like their secondary playmaker. Yusuf Nurkic is the primary secondary creator with the first unit. Like he's the hub that everything kind of runs through in their pick and rolls and playing 4-on-3. Like, and so without all their creators, Cam is coming to the Trailblazers running the second unit.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's been happening. Like, that's how limited they have been on initiators and primary creators. And so I sit here and I'm like, everybody's crucifying Chauncey for not running creative enough offense. And I'm sitting here going, what the hell do you want him to do? Like, he's not, he doesn't, like, and again, could they scheme some things to like win on the margins a little bit better? Sure. But if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel to try to get by on a nightly basis and you're not doing that, like, I can't indict him for that. You know what I mean? Like, to me, the best like 2 or 3 coaches in the NBA, like there's clear separation. But coaches like 6 through 20, 6 through 18, it's kind of like, do they fit your team? Like one coach could suck in one location, do everything the same in another location, and have it work for them. I think it just depends on where you are, the opportunity given, the personnel that you have, how well you work with those people in like, and that's the thing about Chauncey. I'm around the team. I don't think he's lost the locker room. Like, do I think that there are questions about certain things? Sure. But I don't think this is a situation where like people are just tuning him out.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. And like Tibbs, I think that happened to him in Minnesota. And that's not an indictment, but things like just run their course eventually. I don't think that it has necessarily run its course yet with Chauncey.
And that's going to come up again when we talk about Cam, because obviously like the Daily News just put out a thing where they asked Cam without a single follow-up about his time in New York. And that led to like crucified Tibbs again, which I wonder, like, do I think the Knicks handled the situation well? No. Do I wish they had like had a plan of like, Tibbs, if we trade for this player, is there a rotation spot open? How's that? We're trading a 1st round pick. Like, could we actually like use this player, like actually be in lockstep with your coach? But the thing you just said about has he lost the locker room? I think like there was a point this season, like Yaron Weitzman just wrote an article that recently, it was over the last couple of days, about how there's this December 4th inflection point with the Knicks where they, and this actually will lead perfectly into the Cam conversation, where the Knicks blew like a big first half lead to the Mavericks, and then Luka and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Reggie Bullock and everybody that had something to do with the Knicks rained threes in the second half. And it was a matinee game at MSG. Dolan apparently gave the entire front office and his staff fix this. This is embarrassing. And everybody, all the people close to us and everybody around the team was like, some changes might come if they lose the next day. It was a back-to-back the next day against Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs. And if they lose to Jalen Brunson's old team and then the guy he didn't trade for in back-to-back days on a Sunday night in New York City, a lot of us think that if they lose that game to the Cavs, that Tibbs is fired. What ended up happening since then, Dan, is the Knicks have the second best record in the NBA, the second best net rating. And the big thing that happened, and this, again, will lead to the player we're about to talk about, they took Cam Reddish out of the rotation for good. And I am not tying 1-1. Do I wish the Knicks had handled him better? Yes. Or the situation better? Yes. Our assumption was at a certain point when the Knicks had they won 8 straight games from that point. They had shortened the rotation to 9, which highlighted that gave more minutes for Emmanuel Quickly and kept some of their other players that are doing things that Tibbs is more comfortable with. Do I think there was actually a point where you could have given Cam another shot? Yes. I also wonder if an agreement with front office, agent, player, coach was we're just going to keep him on the sidelines until to avoid an injury at the deadline. We'll find you a new home. No. But look, I'm just going off his numbers get thrown at us since he went to Portland all the time. And it's Cam had this tonight. He's shooting these splits. And we're just Josh Hart's been a revelation. And I'm
are you watching Josh Hart?
Right. I also Cam. So this is where I actually need you to clarify for me, because I'm looking at his on-off splits, and he's in the 50th percentile. This is better than it was the other night when I looked, to be honest. But he's still a minus when he's on the floor versus off the floor. His offensive to defensive rating is minus 8.6. They're 4-9 since the trade. They have the worst defense in the NBA since the trade. I'm not blaming Cam. I'm just asking, how much does that have to do with it? And this is where I go to you. How has Cam Reddish looked? Is he the prince that was promised that his hive continues to tell us that we gave up for nothing?
What's really funny is it's funny that you mentioned Cleveland as an inflection point. In 2018-19, when the Blazers went to the Western Conference Finals, they got the crap kicked out of them in New York. In a matinee game, Zach Collins turned 21 the night before.
Oh, okay.
He got interviewed on the sideline, and I could smell the vodka through the TV.
Okay.
I mean, they got embarrassed, and it was bad. It was so bad. And had they lost in Cleveland, it's kind of funny, Knicks, Cleveland, inflection points, coaches. Terry Stotts was going to get fired. It got that bad. Yeah. And they ended up going to the Western Conference Finals. So it's funny that you mentioned those teams kind of again in that same kind of scenario.
So you heard it around again. If the Knicks are headed to the Eastern Conference Finals because of an inflection point that
involved the Knicks and the Cavs.
There you go.
So with Cam, like I mentioned, he's been having to run the second unit, and you'll see he's played 13 games now in just under 400 minutes with the Trailblazers.
So real quick, he started initially, right? He was in the starting 5. I just recently noticed that he went to the second unit, and Tybal got moved.
Simons came back.
Simons came back. Okay, so that's why.
So Simons was out. Tybal was the natural guy that were sliding into 3 to be kind of alongside to be Dame and Jeremy and Nurk when they're all healthy. But Cam was starting. Chauncey was raving about Cam. He thinks that there's truly something special about Cam. And I will say this. Cam does stuff that makes your eyebrows go up, particularly attacking the rim. Now, finishing at the rim is a different story. But attacking the rim, his ability to accelerate and decelerate is elite. One of the things that I think is often under-discussed in the NBA is the ability to decelerate. I think Luka Doncic is the best deceleration guy in the entire NBA. That's how he's not that fast. No, but he's one of the strongest guys in the league, and he can stop literally on a dime. You just blow right by. And that's how he draws fouls as well. But Cam keeps keeps people guessing. The problem that he has is transitioning power up and actually powering through and finishing. And for a 6'8" guy with good size, that's underwhelming to say the least. But I see like what they see in him. Like he has the ability in pick and rolls to create for himself. And he has had a couple passes where I'm like, okay, the vision opens up. Like defensively, I don't really kill him right now because, well, Portland's terrible defensively to begin with. And integrating into a new team and just like, here, go. Like,
yeah,
that's not exactly easy to do, particularly when he didn't play for 30 games. Like he wasn't in game shape. Like, so working his way into that. But the flip side of this is when he's bad, it's really bad. There is no like, okay, here's the average for Cam. It's either, oh, that was sexy as hell, or oh my God, what the hell is he doing in the NBA? Like there is no in between with it. But I understand like why you can get enamored. And here's my thing for him. For him to be good, for him to like be a guy, he needs to like be remotely reliable defensively and finish at the rim. He does those two things. He's a good NBA player. The problem is, I'm looking at his cleaning the glass numbers. In Portland, in 13 games, he's 58% at the rim.
Yeah.
Like if you're 6'8", like, which is why he didn't fit in New York, because you can't have RJ and Cam. You can't have two big dudes who can't finish at the rim. Like
the defensive effort, I think, is the he had too many of those games, especially when he started seeing his minutes get fewer and fewer of the why are you still in the NBA? And nothing will drive a head coach, more specifically this head coach, more crazy. Yes. And look, like the guy that they replaced him with was Deuce McBride, who was like started off. But it's an effort guy, but like started off at a 0 offensively. And it was like, listen, you're here to play defense. And we saw the impact immediately. Then teams started going zone against the second unit. It was like, all right, you're going to have to start making some shots, which brought back up the why aren't you playing Cam type of stuff. What's been really cool to see, and I do have a follow-up on Cam in a second, is to see like Josh Hart came and took his spot in the rotation. And during this road trip, when Brunson's been out, you've actually seen like, oh, so maybe him and Josh Hart, maybe that's the prototype. Like Hart's taking like 5-6 shots a game, but he's making an impact. And Deuce, like maybe we don't need you to shoot that much. Just make an impact offensively, move the ball, be a like hit an open shot when you get it. And that I think is what has made this so attractive to the Knicks, is a player like that, where unlike Cam, who really I thought needed to go someplace, make all the mistakes you need to, and kind of learn on the job. I think that's true with a lot of young players that don't really get the freedom to operate in a not so pressured environment. Like,
and Chauncey has led him, and that's the thing.
Good, which is like that. I again don't mean this too disrespectfully, but
no, trust me, Portland can offer that right now.
I thought like he needed to go to a place like when Markelle Fultz got traded from Philly to Orlando, where it's like go to a place where winning isn't like the most number one priority right now. And as a result, like I hope Cam plays every game the rest of the season.
He's going to get as many
minutes as possible to make all these mistakes. I cannot fault the Knicks, where every game is imperative and you need to try and win every game, to turn to players that impact winning a little more.
2 years ago, the Blazers wouldn't have done this. Yeah, like they wouldn't have given this opportunity. And that the thing is, like, because the Blazers, part of the reason the Blazers traded away Josh Hart is because they don't want to pay him $18 million next year, because he doesn't fit. It's not that Josh Hart isn't good. And it's not like they didn't want Josh Hart. It's just that when you have Damian Lillard playing 36 minutes a night or 35 minutes a night, and Anthony Simons playing 34, 35 minutes a night at the 1 and 2, there's 96 minutes to go, and you only have 30 more minutes to give there. And are you giving every single one of those minutes to Josh Hart? Or are you trying to get a Matisse Thybulle in there? Or are you trying to get a Shaedon Sharpe in there? Like, and so it was like, well, which one do you kind of prioritize? And when you've got a guy like Cam Reddish, you can slide him up to 3 much more easily than you can Josh. Like, Josh can go against second units as a 3. You can't close with Josh Hart as a 3 unless you're big everywhere else. Like, come playoff time, I would be shocked to see if Josh Hart closes as a 3 in New York. I'm sure Tibbs will try.
Really?
I'm sure Tibbs will try it because he rebounds incredibly well. But what will end up happening is, in 16 game seasons, they mismatch hunt. And as much as Josh competes his ass off defensively, and he does, there's no doubt, you do not get lost minutes with Josh Hart. That's what I love about him. I love Villanova guys. Love them. as much as he competes. And I think he was like the number 1 or number 2 rated ISO defender among guards for most of the season in Portland. He was very good. When he got exploited is when he got put in those pick and rolls and the big wings got him. And in the East, you got plenty of big wings you got to deal with. And that's the thing is I look at that and I go, I think Tibbs will try it. And I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in the long run, it's one of those situations where it's like, I don't think you optimize Josh putting him in those situations. But I also think the Knicks have done a very, very good job of letting him eat minutes between halfway through the first quarter and halfway through the third quarter. Like he gobbles those minutes up and he patchworks over everything. I was looking, he's shooting in the 99th percentile with the Knicks on effective field goal percentage, just under 70%, which it'll dip.
That's what he's doing.
Yeah. Listen, he did the exact same thing in Portland. When the Blazers traded for him from the Pelicans, he had, they called it, he had his Barack Obama game. He had 44.
Mm-hmm.
Like he went nuts. And it was just like, what the hell? And I'll send you the link when we're done here. I asked Josh specifically about why he stopped shooting threes in Portland and what was going on. Like it's a video conversation that took off on Instagram a little bit more, mostly because he's rubbing himself with lotion as I'm asking it. The women got a little too hot and bothered over it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, he wasn't avoiding it. But when Josh came to the Trailblazers, he had a 53% attempt rate on threes. He had dropped down to under 22%. Like that's a staggering change. Now back with the Knicks again, his 3-point rate is back up.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think there was certainly, I don't want to say an issue, but he definitely had a mental block about, number 1, his wife's pregnant with twins. Number 2, like he's getting traded. He knows he's getting traded. It was the worst kept secret in Portland. So I would imagine all that stuff kind of is like, he's tight, but he gets to New York. He gets to be with his BFF and Jalen. He knows that the contract situation, he's good there going forward. Like, and Josh is the ultimate like good vibes roller coaster. Like when the vibes are good, man, you want Josh leading it because he keep the good times rolling. That's what he does.
So 2 things. One, as far as whether or not he closes at the 3 in the playoffs, I think I honestly think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to, unless RJ is feeling it or quickly. Honestly, no, I think the Knicks' best closing lineup is Brunson, Quickly, Hart, Randall, Mitch. And then if RJ is feeling it, it's either, honestly, I think Tibbs would choose him over Quickly.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, I'd rather have Emmanuel Quickly in his defense at all times.
I would too.
I think there is a case to be made that if Josh Hart is playing poorly, like he played poorly against Miami, but that effort that you saw, like to your point, big wings like Jimmy Butler might give him some problems.
Jimmy Butler, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, like those guys.
Realize what you're saying. The Knicks are not going to see the Miami Heat in the playoffs unless we get to like the conference finals. And for some reason it's the 6 versus the 7, or the 5 versus the 7, So where the Knicks are right now, I actually trust Josh Hart against a Donovan Mitchell or a Darius Garland.
Yes, those matchups, guard matchups, he's significantly better.
So as a result, if the Knicks are able to survive a Cleveland first round matchup and win the Donovan Mitchell Bowl, and they're in the second round against, let's say the Celtics get the 1, everything else is house money at that point. The Knicks made the second round of the playoffs with Josh Hart.
That's fair. So that's totally fair. Again, that's maybe putting cart before the horse, but like in an optimal world, Josh Hart is your super sub, like 2 guard. Like, because then you optimize him. And I understand optimizing a guy off your bench is not like paramount, but when you have one of those guys, like when you have a super sub that just kicks the crap out of second units, not necessarily in scoring, by winning every second chance ball.
I get it.
Like hitting the floor, like generating turnovers, getting you extra possessions, getting you out in transition, getting tip outs, knocking down that back-breaking, corner 3. Like those things, especially in the playoffs, those things are just so huge.
Yeah. And to your point about transition, what I've noticed while they've been missing Brunson is like, while Quickly runs with the second unit, Josh Hart is basically their backup point guard.
Yes.
And this is where somebody to optimize Obi Toppin has been necessary. And what do you know? A guy that thrives in transition, of a rim running big like Toppin, is able to kind of get out on the break and actually someone sees him in Josh Hart. Let's just wrap up the Cam thing real quick. You are in the locker room. Have you talked to Cam yet?
I've talked to Cam twice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your impression of him?
I just kind of introduced myself to him the first time, because he had just gotten there. And it was very much hey, man, I'm Danny. Good to meet you. Welcome here. If you ever want to talk, blah, blah, blah. I heard good things about you guys from guys in New York about you. Just nothing serious, along those lines. Because I didn't hear anything bad about Cam in the locker room. Like, that was not anything that was like, nothing that was like, there was like, oh no, he was a cancer in the locker room. Like,
right.
I didn't hear any of that. So, because plus me, guys will tell you real quick if they don't like somebody.
Yeah.
And other than that, like, it was, and like you can allude to the piece was at the Daily News that, he wasn't, I think the line was, it wasn't about basketball.
Which, yeah, I would have liked to know what it was. He mentioned that it was political and like you needed to make every shot and you needed to, and the follow-up I would have liked, or the emphasis of the article I would have liked, is like they're winning. Like, that's the focus here. Yes, you should have some pressure on you to perform in some results. And look, like, they've given a longer leash to some other guys that probably impact winning in other ways. And that's why. But that I thought was like, why didn't it work out with Cam? And I thought it was a bad fit. Like, you need to go to a place where they're a little more patient. And that is what
Phillips seems to be. Yes.
Where he's ended up now. Exactly.
And I asked Chauncey about Cam specifically. I'm like, what is it about Cam? And he goes, number one, he didn't say this negatively. He said Tibbs is like, you're either a Tibbs guy or you're not.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily like you're in the lineup or not, but like, some players can't deal with that kind of coach. Like, there's, you guys are in this conversation. A lot of your listeners probably know this. Like, there are players in the NBA who are great players who don't want to go to Miami because they don't want to deal with Pat Riley and the Miami Heat way. Like, they don't want to have calipers on their arms to know their body fat coming in from camp. They want to be honest, they want to take the summer off. And then they want to work their way into a season. There are stars in the NBA that come into training camp not in shape. Shocking, I know. But like, there's all these little things around the NBA. Like, certain coaches do this, certain organizations do this. Like, finding those fits it's super weird and unique. And like, we don't really talk about them because it's like the subtext of everything. But Chauncey was very high and glowingly praised Cam. And I know I was like, well, he's a new player and they just acquired him. Blah. Listen, man, Kevin Knox was straight up when I asked Chauncey about Cam and Matisse Thybulle, he's like, oh yeah, no, they're starting. And I was like, so where do you kind of think Kevin? He's like, well, Kevin's kind of on a different path.
Yeah, shout out former Knick lottery pick Kevin Knox.
And I was like, is that a path out of the NBA kind of a deal? Like, I mean, he knows the deal. Like, he's looking at Cam, because here's the thing, Portland, kind of going full circle, if they do make a big move this summer,
Cam could be in it.
Well, not only could Cam be in it, they need some players behind. Like, you look at the Phoenix Suns right now, they're like, oh shit, we don't have anybody behind anybody because we traded everybody. Like, kind of a situation. Like, if they can get Cam at like $6 million a year, like, is that a bad thing? No. Like, if they can take and basically turn the mini MLE that they spent on Gary Payton, because Matisse Thybulle is an RFA and they now have bird rights for both these guys, and Cam and Matisse, and they could re-sign them for essentially this, like, two players that they could have spent the money on for Josh Hart. Granted, Josh Hart's the better player, but like, you need like personnel, you need like bodies that you can count on. And so if Cam is one of those guys, so they're investing time in him. They're letting him run the second unit. Like, they're showing him they're showing him the love. And I think Chauncey, the exact words he said is, I like pouring into young guys. Like, I like pouring into guys like Cam. He goes, I don't feel like Tibbs, that's a different situation. He goes, and it kind of said like Atlanta, like, I think we all could kind of look at it from Atlanta and go, yeah, well, Trae Young. So,
well, no, yeah, that's a whole other bag of worms, can of worms, bag of laughs, can of worms, whichever analogy you want. I'm glad that he's getting the opportunity. I genuinely hope that, like you mentioned his next contract. I'm glad that I thought someone might take a chance on that talent anyway, but I'm glad there is going to be
like, let's think about it this way. If there's if it's a 3-year, like $18 million deal, or 3-year, $21 million deal
with incentives, something guaranteed,
team option. Like, is anybody mad at that? Like, even if that was the option with the Knicks, would you have been mad at that?
the way they were using him, I would be surprised that they're using.
But I mean, like commensurate talent level, is what I'm saying.
To where the Knicks are right now, I actually would be like, why are they spending money like this on Cam Reddish when they're not going to use them?
I'm saying, but like if
in theory, just market value, yes, that's probably what. And with the cap going up, what a Cam Reddish is like, it's really worth.
That's like slightly above a BAE.
Yeah,
and if that's the case, and you're protecting yourself, and he's your 8th, 9th guy, 10th guy, like in a perfect world, that's fine.
Listen,
I have
Evan Fournier is making how much to not play?
Is it 18.4 this year?
You have to think that's the number. And then like Derrick Rose is making around 11 or 12 to not play right now. So it would fit right in having Cam Reddish on a 3 for 21 right next to them. But again, he's getting playing time and there's no pressure to be perfect or to win. It seems important.
I've had a lot of the Cam Reddish hive follow.
That's the last question.
They followed.
How loud have they been? How much has Portland jumped in on the bandwagon? Because
there are people.
I don't want to misrepresent, and I'm trying not to be hyperbolic here, but there's a lot of. But like Dame got his second star is like the conversation that seems to be the energy that seems to be
I haven't gotten that
resonating. Wait for it. 130-point game against the Knicks, maybe, and maybe that'll happen.
I am interested to see how that goes because rivalry games and matchup. Because here's the thing, Josh Hart. Forever Portland Trailblazer. They love him. What he did at the press conference following the whole GP2 fiasco and basically telling the Warriors and the Athletic to get bent on his own volition. Like he's on high. Cam, obviously, it was a less unceremonious exit. It wasn't messy, I don't think, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, I have no idea. I think he's a 22-year-old kid or 23-year-old kid that guy has been given opportunities elsewhere and could understand why he was getting DNPs, and like a kid is what he need to go someplace to make mistakes. It's the theme of my feelings like Cam Reddish. I don't think he should be out of the league. I think he needed to go to Portland. But like you said, I did not get this sense. And I think the fact that the Knicks also have like not commented and there was never any like behind the scenes, like Cam is just is upset.
There was
a note that he went to an assistant coach and said, "I don't think I'm being used effectively," and then he
which happens out of the rotation every single day.
As a result, so if that's dysfunction, then every team is dysfunctional.
On every team in the NBA, there's only one player that's not unhappy. One player.
And it's the one with the highest usage?
Yes,
exactly.
It's the only player on any NBA team that's not unhappy.
So overall, if we set like a median reaction to the fan base on Cam Reddish, what has it been?
Mostly positive.
Okay.
Like I said, from what I've watched Cam from afar, Atlanta, and then obviously the little bit of time in New York. There are always going to be the fans in every fan base that love like young, talented, like lottery picks on the redrafts. I look at Cam and I think he's toolsy, but the thing about me and how I evaluate young players and prospects is what is the one thing that you do that gets you on the floor in an NBA level? Like you have to have a great to elite skill. Like look at every player that has mattered for the Knicks. Jalen Brunson's shot creation, Mr. Robinson's rim protection, Josh Hart's rebounding. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be something that like translates particularly for your position, but you have to have something that gets you on the floor in the first place. Like Cam has the potential to be a very good shooter. Like his shot mechanics, while a little bit of an unnatural or unorthodox shooting motion, when he quiets his feet and he spends the time to get ready for a shot, he's an incredible shooter. It's you watch him let it go and you're like, that's a really easy ball. He shoots the living hell out of it. And then you watch him not take time and not do necessary preparations, like when he's in the corner and he's got his hands at his side instead of having his hands up and being ready to get into a shooting motion. And you're just sitting there going, you watch the ball hit there and he's like, he's going to miss this. And then he airballs it. And you're like, I could have seen that coming. It's like the little preparation things. And that's the thing is that him? Is that his basketball IQ? Is it, coach? Like Tibbs is not a developmental coach. He never has been. And that's not listen, I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying
I hear what you're saying. You go to him if you're trying to raise your floor, not necessarily develop a team that where the floor doesn't matter.
Exactly. And like maybe, and again, same with Nate. Nate is not a developmental, but what Nate McMillan is a culture setter. Like he teaches you how to be a professional in the NBA. And I think Tibbs is kind of in that same mold of like, this is what it takes to be in the NBA. They're lifers. Like they get that part of it.
Yeah.
I wonder if Cam needed a coach that's like, not necessarily going to baby him, going to help, but like walk him through stuff. And Chauncey's like right on the edge of being a Hall of Fame caliber point guard. Like having a guy kind of show you the ropes in that sense. And maybe, again, Chauncey's not the kinder, gentler coach type. Like he chews ass with the best of them. But I do think he sees like little bits of himself in like every like primary ball handler. Like, ooh, I see a little something of this. I can work with this. And he said as much. Like, I kind of know what Cam's been through. And if you remember Chauncey Billups' career, he bounced around before landing with the Pistons. Like, he was almost out of the NBA before, kind of figuring things out. And so I think he sees a little bit of Cam in that sense of like playing for the wrong coaches and then playing for the right coach, because he played for Larry Brown in Detroit, who was a notorious hard ass. And I think maybe Chauncey looks at him and says, there's something here I can work with. Now, do I think Cam's going to turn into a star? No. But do I think he's going to be like that he has the propensity to be like a plus rotation player? Yeah, he's 6'8", can put the ball on the floor, attack the rim, and shoot the ball. Yes, of course. Like it was like, well, he doesn't play defense. I'm like, have you looked at the NBA today? Like nobody plays defense.
It's a hint of that, and the scoring is just so it's the most talent we've had in the league maybe ever.
Like you can't even play defense if you want to. Like even really good defensive teams. What's the best defensive rating in the NBA right now? Is it 109?
The Cavs are like just under 110. Yeah.
Think about that. Like 5 years ago, 110 was one of the best offenses in the league.
Oh yeah. The Knicks, I go back to that Knicks season with Melo in 2013, and they had the third best offense in the league, and it was like they're scoring 112 a game on 100 possessions. It's like, oh, that would be like one of the worst offensive.
Yes, that's what I mean. So it's like now, is there a world where Cam can be a good player in the NBA? Yes, because you look at bench units, and I think that's like the one thing that's kind of missing in a lot of bench units is like having a 6'8" creator who can shoot and score.
Well, this was the first of two final Cam conversations we're probably going to have here at Knicks Film School. There was this, and then whatever happens in this game on Tuesday night, there will be a post-game reaction that will either
maybe I'll pop in with you guys in the post-game.
Just, can you believe we let Cam go? Or it's like, oh, good, we can.
I'll be like this, like, hey, everything I said just
yeah, never mind.
And again,
he's not a rotation, but listen,
rotation player. Like I'm not calling him star. I'm saying rotation player.
See That's where the Cam Hive might come find you.
You like how I couched that?
Yeah. That's where they're like, what do you mean he's not a star? He's the Prince that was whatever. I am glad he's playing minutes. We'll see how many of those are meaningful tomorrow night. Danny, every time you're here, even though it's only been twice, the time gets away from us. And I'm really thankful that
shut up.
That's good. You're on radio. You shouldn't.
Yes, that's kind of how this works.
Yes.
I literally talk for a living, and I haven't talked for a living for almost 2 weeks. So I've got plenty to say.
Well, I'm glad we could help you get it out. And I wish it was about a basketball team that was, going better, higher places. But
you know what, man? It's funny. Like I am a Blazers fan. Like it's funny. Like I grew up in LA, but I grew up as a Blazers fan because the first ever basketball game I went to was Blazers Lakers in the Forum. Like
okay.
But yeah, I know. Trust me, I get it.
I hope it wasn't 2000. Jeez.
No, dude, no Forum.
Oh, the 80s. Okay.
I am old.
Okay. Wow. So that old.
Yeah, brother, I'll be 39 in a couple months.
34, 35 this summer. So I'm not.
Trust me, the shit creeps up on you. But like, I saw Clyde Drexler and how just like just majestic he was, and then I weirdly enough moved to Portland. Like it was just kind of how that happened. So yes, I'm a fan of this team, but I came into this season believing the front office because I have talked to Joe Cronin on and off record, and I kind of understand like what they're trying to accomplish and what they're hoping to do. And that I looked at this year as an evaluation year, and if they were healthy, they would have been like right at 500. Like I right now, them being 31 and 37, like they're freaking out like they're the Rockets, and it just. Now, if they go into this summer and they lay an egg, then I get the pitchforks out. Like that's kind of like
I get it.
I looked at this year as like a real evaluation year. Honestly, I think that was kind of what last year turned out to be for the Knicks.
Well, you wish they would have pulled the plug a little sooner with
certainly
with the evaluations,
and
because we were seeing a lot of Cam barely played last year in what,
and
like you said,
I remember this conversation a year ago, like
an evaluation year.
We talked about IQ, like I was a proponent then of like get quick on the floor, like there's no reason you shouldn't be, and there's a little bit of that right now with the Blazers with Shaedon Sharpe, but it's like he's a rookie and he's played like 1,500 minutes. Like, calm down. It's not like he's not playing, guys.
Yeah.
So,
well,
we'll see what happens tomorrow.
We will evaluate how the Cams of the world, the Thybulls of the world, and whoever else plays against the Knicks. People hearing this tonight against the Knicks. And you know how I hope that the game goes. I just
look, man. At this point,
the Cam stuff is so fascinating.
Stacking up L's isn't exactly a bad thing for them right now. So, like, wouldn't be shocked to see the soft tank being rolled out. So,
all right. Well, from your lips to God's ears, Dan, thank you so much, as always, for making the time for us. Before you go, tell everybody where they can find you and all your stuff.
Yeah, you can find me on podcast form on Jacked Ramseys, available also on the Blue Wire Network and anywhere else you get podcasts. And like Andrew said beforehand, if you're wanting to hear what's going on with the Portland Trailblazers, you can find me on the Odyssey app, or if you're interested in Portland, on 1080 The Fan from noon to 3 with my co-host Dusty Hira. So I'm pretty much all over the place. I'm also on YouTube. Just search Jacked Ramseys. Yes. We do all the live shows and everything there, although we haven't done one in 2 weeks because I'm still recovering from a wild hip surgery. So, yay!
And on that note, thank you for joining me. Rest up well, my friend, and it's always good to see you.
You too, brother. Take care.